Our question today comes from Melanie, who is a submissive and seeks to find ways to become more of a fun submissive for her dominant. She's into the predatory prey archetype, but wonders how she might be able to become a better prey or a submissive for her dominant.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting notions here. Inherent underneath the question, there's an interesting notion of wanting to serve. She is taking initiative in order to give her dominant a better experience. And she's asking, how can I give him a better experience in this kink? Now, the question is framed very well in that regard, but it also indicates that she has not been able to see herself through his eyes. She doesn't fully empathize or understand what he's getting out of this kink. And I think that's an interesting aspect because part of that is a failure. Part of that is an inadequacy that she should probably work on to understand what he wants, what he gets out of it. And part of it is a fundamental aspect of why he's dominant and she's submissive. And I think that's one of the more interesting things about these types of questions is I feel like I've talked very explicitly to all of my exes, to many submissives. I've written a book on this. The submissives who read my book have all been like, oh, wow, you really get it. Like, wow, you really understand this. But the reality is I don't. It sounds awful to me. The notion of being submissive sounds fucking terrible. I understand what they've told me and what they say they get out of it, but there's some part of me that doesn't understand and will never understand because it just sounds terrible. And that's why I'm not a submissive. So from a prey standpoint, looking at her predator, there's part of her that is going to be like, that sounds terrible. Why would anyone want to be predator? And I think you'll see this on a lot of forums too, is submissives asking like, why would anybody want to be a dom? It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds awful. You have to think about all these things. You have to plan these things. The whole joy of submission is just being able to let go and be free and to trust the other person and to enjoy their desire and their pleasure. Dominance doesn't have any of that. Why would anybody want to do it? And that is natural to have that gap of understanding that can't be traversed because it's not who you are. You can understand what the other person tells you, but you can never fully understand because it's not who you are. It's the opposite of who you are. And that's the attraction. That's the yin yang of it. So she can, to some degree, talk with her dominant about what parts of his psychology he finds most enjoyable about this predator-prey experience. What emotions does he find enjoyable about that? And she has to understand that she really won't fully identify with those emotions. They will still sort of sound terrible to her. And she'll need to say, okay, this is what he's saying he likes. What other things could I do that would feed into that? Maybe he likes the expression of fear on her face. Maybe he likes that notion of her being a little bit terrified. And so she could lean into exploring that and say, hey, actually, it's really scary when you pin me down. I don't know, but some specific thing that she genuinely finds a bit scary and say, hey, maybe we could do more of that, assuming it's within her limits. And of course, if they're doing this, they should have a safe word. So that provides an escape hatch for all these things. But that understanding that the emotion that he's enjoying is her terror is different than understanding that the thing he's enjoying is the chase, in which case she can try to run more or run harder, or they can try and take it outdoors into the country somehow. But that's a totally different set of behaviors based on trying to understand what it is that he's enjoying specifically. And the only way to do that is to talk to him about the emotional set that he experiences as enjoyable in that type of play.
I wonder what your take is on the following proposition, or I'm going to make a proposition related to this question. I want to know what your opinion is. So this is a submissive asking how she can be a better submissive. Is it not the role of the dominant to tell the submissive how to be a better submissive? Why is it the submissive that's trying to answer that question?
We don't know what's happening in that relationship, so it's hard to say. But there are a number of possibilities. One is that he may not be particularly articulate and he may not be very good at expressing why he finds something enjoyable. So he himself may not know how she could make it more enjoyable because he is enjoying it a great deal, and he's not aware of wanting her to do something else. And so if she asks him, what could I do to make it better? He may say, it's awesome. There's nothing to do. And so he may leave her a little bit at a miss there. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that he puts time and planning and energy and effort into their sessions, into figuring out the time and figuring out how it's going to go. And she is looking to reciprocate that effort by intentionally making it better for him. So, loose analogy here, he may love how beautiful she is, but she may want to know, well, should I wear a dress or should I go to the gym? Would you like me to be thinner? Well, yes, she can ask him, but he may love just how she looks. And now if she asks, hey, do you like me better in dresses or in trousers or whatever? He may have an opinion, but it may not occur to him specifically to control that. And I think it's a huge aspect for submissives in my mental schema of submission. I actually think that this level, I call it, is really important for making the relationship work long term. So I'll just briefly go through. The base layer for submission is trust. She has to be able to trust him. The second layer is respect. There has to be a genuine layer of respect. Then submission can be put on top of that. I think submission is comprised of obedience and acceptance. And then there is what I would call service. The intentional desire to take the initiative in submission so that the submission becomes active, not purely passive. Otherwise, obedience and acceptance is a purely passive experience energetically. He says what I have to do, and then I do it. He does this, and I accept that he's done it. Service is the next layer where now she actively says, oh, you know what? He really likes these things. Let me do more of them. Let me figure out what he likes. Even though he hasn't asked for it, I want to please. I want to serve, and I'm going to take the initiative to do that. I don't think a long-term relationship can be balanced energetically without a submissive taking that step, which she is doing here. Otherwise, the dominance just gets annoying and exhausting because the energy is not being returned. There's another mental model that I like to use that I think is quite important on some level, is that there are what I consider 3 axes of interaction in an intimate relationship. One is who is doing the action. He's chasing her. She is being chased. He's fucking her. She is being fucked. He is spanking her. She is being spanked. There's a doing and being done to semantic there. The other axis is whose benefit is it for? So he's spanking her because she likes being spanked, or he's spanking her because he likes spanking her. And both may be true. That may be somewhere in the middle. It's a continuum. But maybe there's something she really likes that he doesn't care for, and vice versa. And they do these things to please each other. And I think that's very natural and healthy in a relationship. And then there's the third axis that I think is often forgotten, which is who initiates it? Whose idea was it? She likes to eat at a particular restaurant. He is going to take her there, and out of the blue, he says, hey, I know you're really likely eating that restaurant. Let's go there tonight. So he's taking the initiative, he's taking the action, but it's for her benefit. That's an arrangement of interaction, and all the permutations are possible. She could take the initiative and ask, sir, can we go to my favorite restaurant? And she can ask for that. So she's taking the initiative for him to act for her benefit. All the different permutations. One of the things the reason I bring this up is that notion of initiation is often forgotten, is that we look at who's doing more. Well, I'm doing this for you. I'm taking you to dinner. I'm spanking you. I'm fucking you. I'm doing these things. But a significant part of the energy is in taking the initiative, is who started it? Whose idea was it? Who thought about it? Who planned it? And that initiative energy can be very exhausting, even if the other person's doing everything. So even if I tell my submissive, hey, go clean the sink, if I had to think about what I need you to do, well, I'm putting some significant amount of energy in, even though you're the one who ends up doing it, Right. So I think part of what's happening in this question is she is feeling that imbalance that, hey, he's taking all the initiative here, and I need to figure out how to take a bit more initiative in him acting. It's a predator-prey thing, so he's going to be doing the action, but how do I take initiative for his action, for his pleasure? And that's the permutation that she's specifically asking about